Let's be honest, standing in the cat food aisle is an absolute nightmare, and picking the wrong tin might just earn you a look of utter betrayal from your furry overlord. But what if I told you the difference between a thriving cat and a sluggish one is hiding right there in plain sight on those shelves? Let's start from the bottom of my list and work our way up to the absolute best wet cat food you can buy right now. 6. Purina Fancy Feast Seafood Classic Pate. Look, opening this box is an experience every cat owner knows because this stuff is literally everywhere. The convenience factor is huge, and I get why so many people just grab a box off the shelf and call it a day. The cans are small, they stack easily, and they are incredibly cheap. But the moment you pop the tab on one of these cans, that overwhelming, incredibly pungent fish smell just hits you right in the face. The pate texture is super dense and tightly packed into the tin. I mean, you really have to dig in there with a spoon and mash it up pretty aggressively, just so your cat can actually eat it without dragging a solid block of food across the kitchen floor. Let me explain the ingredient list, because this is where things get really murky. When you look closely at what is actually inside this pate, you see a lot of meat byproducts listed right up front. These are essentially the leftover parts of the animal that are heavily processed and cooked down. It is just not the high-quality muscle meat you really want to be feeding a carnivore on a daily basis. Hydration is obviously a massive deal for cats, and while this is wet food, the quality of the moisture is highly questionable. You also start seeing artificial flavors and weird coloring sneaking into the recipe. 5. Tiki Cat After Dark Wet Cat Food. This brand gets so much hype online, and people absolutely swear by it. I bought a whole variety pack expecting an absolute miracle for my cats. The packaging looks incredibly premium, dark and moody, making you feel like you are buying a 5-star meal for a tiny apex predator. They really lean into the whole prey diet philosophy, which sounds great in theory. When you pop the lid off the can, you do not see mystery mush. You actually see whole pieces of organ meat, like chunks of heart and liver floating around in a dark broth. It visually looks like a wild diet, and the protein numbers on the back of the can are definitely high. Well, here is the massive problem I ran into. The consistency across these cans is completely all over the place. One can I opened was 90% watery broth with barely any meat, and the very next can was a solid dry chunk of chicken. Even worse, I actually found some sharp, unrendered bone fragments in a couple of the chicken cans, which really freaked me out and made me afraid my cat was going to choke. For the premium price tag they slap on this stuff, that kind of sloppy quality control is just entirely unacceptable. You know, you expect so much better when you are paying top dollar for a specialty brand. 4. Blue Buffalo Tastefuls. This was a very noticeable, very welcome step up during my testing. I mean, finally, we get to something that actually looks appetizing when you open it up. The branding feels wholesome, and they make a lot of promises about natural ingredients right on the label. The flaked texture is really quite nice. It is not a solid block of jelly, and it is not a watery soup. You can actually see distinct soft flakes of chicken and tuna in there. It breaks apart incredibly easily with a fork, making it super simple to prep for mealtime without making a massive mess on the counter. Here is what matters most with this one. The very first ingredient is real meat, not a byproduct meal or a cheap filler. When I opened the chicken flavor, it genuinely smelled like roasted chicken, not like a chemical fish market. It feels much closer to actual food, and that gave me a lot of peace of mind. The moisture content here is fantastic too. It has this light, savory broth mixed in with the flakes that my older cat absolutely loved. She is notoriously bad at drinking water from her bowl, so seeing her happily lap up the extra moisture in this food was a huge relief for her kidney health. The cans are also cleverly designed and super easy to portion out if you only feed half a can at a time. It is a really solid middle ground option. 3.
Orijen Premium Pate Wet Cat Food. Orijen is a massive heavy hitter in the premium dry food world, so I was really curious to see how their entry into wet food stacked up. The cans have a very premium weighted feel to them, and the label just screams high-end nutrition. Let me explain their whole nutritional philosophy. They use a massive 90% animal ingredients in these cans. I tested the tuna, salmon, and beef variety, and the rich quality of the meat is obvious the absolute second you peel back the foil. It smells incredibly fresh and incredibly nutrient-dense. It is a pate, sure, but it is not that weird, bouncy, rubbery block you get with the cheaper brands we talked about earlier. It is incredibly soft and spreads almost like butter. They use real bone broth to give it that moisture, which is just a brilliant touch for joint health and deep hydration. After feeding this exclusively for about a week, I actually noticed a visible difference in my cats. Their energy levels spiked, and their coats genuinely looked a bit shinier and felt softer. It is packed with high-quality protein and organ meats that flawlessly mimic what they would naturally hunt and eat in the wild. Bottom line for Orijen, it is definitely on the pricier side of the spectrum, but you are absolutely getting exactly what you pay for here. The moisture content here is fantastic too. It has this light, savory broth mixed in with the flakes that my older cat absolutely loved. She is notoriously bad at drinking water from her bowl, so seeing her happily lap up the extra moisture in this food was a huge relief for her kidney health. The cans are also cleverly designed and super easy to portion out if you only feed half a can at a time. It's a really solid middle ground option. 2. Rawz Natural Premium Shredded Canned Cat Wet Food. This stuff is completely phenomenal. It is a bit harder to find in big box stores, but tracking it down online or at specialty shops is incredibly worth the effort. I mean, their entire claim to fame is being completely and utterly gum-free. Most wet foods, even the really expensive ones, use things like guar gum or xanthan gum as cheap thickeners. Those gums can really upset a sensitive cat's stomach over time. Rawz just skips all that nonsense entirely. The shredded chicken texture is genuinely incredible. I kid you not, it looks exactly like the shredded chicken breast you would prep to put inside your own tacos for dinner. It is just pure, unadulterated meat resting in a completely natural, light, savory broth. Because there are no artificial thickeners or weird starches soaking up the water, the hydration your cat gets from this is pure and straight to the point. If you happen to have a cat with a very sensitive stomach, digestive issues, or early kidney concerns, this food is an absolute lifesaver because it digests so incredibly easily. My cats completely lost their tiny minds over this one. They licked their bowls spotless every single time I served it, not leaving a single shred behind. It is a truly premium, ultra-clean product that over-delivers on every single promise it makes on the label. Weruva Wet Cat Food. Specifically their Cats in the Kitchen variety pack. This is, without a doubt, the absolute gold standard of wet cat food right now. From the packaging to the ingredients to the cat's reaction, it just completely blows everything else out of the water. You know a company actually means business when they produce their cat food inside a human food facility. The quality control here is just entirely unmatched. Every single pouch and can I opened during my testing was perfectly consistent. No weird bone fragments, no random watery batches, just perfect food every time. Here is what matters most and why it won. The moisture content in Weruva is completely off the charts. It is practically a thick, rich stew, absolutely loaded with premium cuts of boneless, skinless white meat chicken breast and wild-caught fish. The gravy is thick, hydrating, and smells good enough to eat yourself. They do not use any weird fillers, grains, or heavy starches. It is absolutely packed with essential amino acids and vital phytonutrients that keep your cat thriving and full of energy. And sure, the flavor names on the pouches are hilarious and punny, but the serious nutrition they provide inside is strictly top tier. Weruva perfectly balances insane human-grade quality with a taste that cats absolutely go feral for. It keeps them heavily hydrated, it keeps their digestion perfect, and it truly makes mealtime the absolute best part of their day. This is the clear, undeniable winner. Final thought. That's all for today, folks.